Alrighty. Now, time for R22 versus Murlock. Let's get it. So, for R22, we're seeing him rocking the long coats. I don't really see him on that too often. While Murlock, he's going to be rocking the KSR up north. All right, so, goodness gracious, the names, dude, it kind of throws me off sometimes. When it comes to the compositions that both of these players are rocking with, they're kind of mirroring, just a little different. With R22 rocking the Squall and rocking the 3 tier 2s with the Falcon, Skunk, and the Cam, as well as the Boar, while Murlock is also doing the Squall composition with the Falcon, but with only the Falcon and the Cam, and the Skunks are getting swapped out with the Mine with the Boar. So, a little different, just a tad bit, but this is probably the most mirrorous composition you're probably going to get between the two. But right now, Murlock is going to go ahead and throw in a couple of Mine just to prevent any gremlin shenanigans from happening. I think he just sold one of them because R22 did see it. So at this moment, he's going to go ahead and throw in a couple of tier 2s, as well as doing an expansion, while R22 decides to go ahead and dive into the Skunks as well as the Squirrels. So that's going to be pretty interesting how this plays out, as Sam continuing to build up the tier 1 even with the vision of the tier 2 out. He is going to try and just be a little greedy and go ahead and go for the tier 1. Well, go for the farming at this juncture. So R22 is going to go ahead and match real quick, though R22 is looking to possibly attack in this juncture, as R22 may look into possibly diving in for the fight, as Murlock does have the squirrel count advantage and is able to take care of business. The Skunk wasn't enough to really help out with that fight. I think only one Skunk was available at the time. So R22 not being able to overcome the amount of squirrels that Murlock had at that time. So R22 probably is going to have to look into possibly matching the squirrel count, or at least getting close to the match. And he will do that before trying to go and dive in again. But now Murlock going to go ahead and dive into the cams on his own because of the slight advantage that he does have over R22. And R22 is going to see the 2 Skunks, well, the 2 tier 2 Warrens being put here. So he's going to probably put another one there on his own, as he does put in some Falcons, rebuys one of the squirrels that he just sold, and continue to farm up. So let's look at the army value a little bit. You can see that Murlock is a little bit ahead, probably by the 1 squirrel warren that he has. No, actually, no. It's probably because of the mines that are everywhere. Meanwhile, looking into the economy, you can see that Murlock is certainly ahead as he continues to farm up as much as he can. It looks like that R22 is looking to probably try and cheese this, but Murlock sees it just in time, so R22 just goes ahead and sells and runs away, just so he can go ahead and try and not lose that value, as he does end up deciding to say bump it and try and go as much tier 2 as possible, as well as throwing in the Boar, as Murlock doing the same thing here. So both Boars are going to be available just in time for this big fight. Meanwhile, for R22, he is going to be more reliant on trying to get the tier 2 up rather than just worrying about the mass squirrel. So it's debatable of what you want to say is going to be the best bet, but The mine are going to really be the X factor depending on where R22 goes. This is the shortest route, and I don't think R22 has seen a lot of the mine placements down, so it'll be a really rough time if he just goes straight into there like that instead of going around. It just depends on what direction he goes into, because if he does go that way, that could spell a lot of disaster for R22 if he hopes to win this game. So R22 does end up going home. There is another mill being bought for Murlock. Nope, he just says never mind. So he might try to use this for something else, but he is aware of the mines, so he doesn't have to worry about them. He did forget only just one, so that one may or may not go off. It just depends. And we did hit the 5-minute mark. He's going to add another cam into the mix. So he's going to be very heavily reliant on the tier 2, it looks like. He did sell off majority of his tier 1 warrants. And yep, there goes the first one, but it doesn't do too much damage. As now he's going to go ahead and prepare for the moles. And it looks like that the mine are still being used as kind of a tanky way, which is fine for cams. Considering the fact that the tier 2 is basically non-existent from this composition for R22, it makes sense for the cams to be the ones. As battle does keep going, and R22 is losing quite a lot, as now it's just the boar, and the boar's about to go down here, trying to take a good bit of that mill, but it's not going to be enough, as R22 is going to have to go home. Not a great battle there for R22 for this one. So he's going to have to do some quick selling, as Murlock is going to come down and try and rain on R22's parade, as he does still have his boar. He has plenty of units to try and combat, as a lot of the cams go down. We're seeing this mill going to be going down pretty soon, but he's got to have to try and protect the boar a little bit. Doesn't want him to go down early, and that mill does eventually fall. So R22 is now starving at this point, and this is probably going to be it. Even with the boar going down, he did what he had to do. That was going to be enough, as Murlock does get the first game as R22 falls 1-0. Let's go ahead and dive into game 2, shall we? So, R22 will be going up against Murlock, as we do see R22 in the east side rocking the long coats, while Murlock rocking the KSR is going to be on the west. So both sides really kind of keeping it the same for the most part. The only difference here is, well, not R22 does change it up a little bit, dropping the boar for the wolf and having a mine as well. Meanwhile, for Murlock, he does stick with the same thing. So looking at the map situation, you could probably say that this is probably a very even map, to be honest with you. It's extremely even, though the advantage could go into R22, as he basically has all 4 of these mills lined up in a row. Meanwhile, Sam is kind of the same thing, but the only difference is that this one that's kind of a little out of the way, but nothing too big. So it's a very even map. Really like it. Really dig it. A lot of open field as well. Open field is a very interesting way to play around with. Now, I will say that when it comes to getting a second mill for either of these guys, it could be a bit of a stretch, as I would imagine that this one and this one right here are going to be the second mills that could possibly be used, but it's going to be a long wait game. We are seeing a couple of mines coming down for R22. He does have one right there. just in case someone bees a gremlin with some lizards, but that's obviously not going to be the case. Meanwhile, Murlock is really going heavy on the tier 1 as Mass Squirrel seems to be the early going game plan for Murlock with 12 compared to the 9 that R22 has. Now, there is going to be a second mill for R22 in this case. He is going to sell a couple of things and buy more mines. And so he's going to go ahead and farm on up real quick. Meanwhile, for Murlock is just going to continue to tech up as he does decide to go and throw in the boar. Very interesting, risky play here, as going for the boar this early, especially with it's pretty good timing, to be honest with you. I do like it, with the fact simply because of the superior squirrel count being there as well to kind of take most of the taking. If this boar is ready and R22 does not have any possible tier 2 to counter this, this may not look good. But he is going to put down a wolf of his own, though I don't know if it's going to be ready in time comparatively. It really depends, as we do have the boar coming on its way. So I'm not sure if the wolf will be able to make it in time before the battle commences. It could make it, maybe, because it is almost done building, and R22 is floating quite a lot of food just to wait to get the things that he needs. He does sell a couple of units to go ahead and get some tier 2. He throws in down a couple of more mine just in case it could be a moving unit. And the wolf is now just gotten paid for. Meanwhile, the boar has already out for Murlock, as Murlock does also have his second mill coming up too. So this is going to be an interesting composition for this, as R22 does have 4 falcons, but I don't think it's going to be enough to take on this number of squirrels, because this is a lot of squirrels. It really is a lot of squirrels, but he may want to attack in now. I mean, yes, the mine could probably help slow him down a little bit, but it just depends on how he maneuvers. He's going to go straight through. He does lose quite a bit of units here, but is it going to be enough? The wolf is now going to come out, but the mill is already been taken down, and now he's just going to go ahead and run away with this boar, trying not to lose him whatsoever. But you do have to be concerned because of the fact that now the boar is going to go... Ooh, the boar is so close to go down. He does eventually go down because of the skunk gas. Some really good late game heroics from the skunk. And now Murlock is trying to go for this fight, and I don't think this is the wisest decision because of the amount of gas that's coming down, especially with that few tier 1. He is able to go ahead and push R22 back to his base, but that's all he can do, as now he's going to have to sell a couple of units in order to go ahead and pay for this boar, because now he's going to be really very aggressive. R22 is, as Murlock looking to possibly try and use the squirrel as much as to his advantage, but they're gonna get mowed down from the skunks, as the one falcon and the 2 skunks just making a lot of noise, as it's really looking like R22 could take this game and tie this series back up, as R22 does focus down on the fresher mill. Now all that's left is just 1 pig, and now we do have the boar coming out. So we'll see if Murlock can probably counter this. He is going to be in a bit of a pickle because he doesn't have much to sell here, so he's just gonna have to go all in and hope for the best. Because now Murlock is starving. The commander goes down. That is not good. But the wolf goes down as well. He does go back home. He is going to sell to try and buy something to go ahead and get there. But the boar's out, and that's going to be R22's game to win. Ooh. Very scrappy by the end of that one. Very back and forth game one game two, excuse me, for R22 and Murlock. Now we're going to go ahead and go on to game number 3, as the series is now tied up 1 apiece. So, rocking the long coats, we have R22 on the east side, while we have Murlock down south rocking the KSR. This is a pretty big map, it looks like, as we see a lot of terrain that's going to be completely useless, as there's nothing whatsoever for Murlock to really play with. Meanwhile, for R22, his stuff is kind of out and about as well, as this base is very, very forward to be a second base. Very, very intriguing map here. Now, looking into the compositions themselves, Murlock, not really any changes whatsoever from the previous game. Same can be said for R22. So, we're going to be basically running it back with the same compositions as the last game, but this time with a much, much different terrain, as this could potentially be a one-base game. Maybe not for Murlock, at least, because he does have one that's right there, but it's just awkwardly placed, as it's completely like separate from the original base, and this one's gonna have to be a little bit more forward. He does have a campfire as well to kind of play around with. Meanwhile, for R22, he essentially just has this as the second base, and that's pretty much it. It's definitely out and about, and could get mowed down pretty easily if he doesn't like go ahead and set up shop as soon as you get that second mill up and going. So it's gonna be interesting to see what the strat will be for these two players. So, starting things off, R22 does bring out his tier 2 out first with the skunk, which definitely puts him in higher value, as R22 is, I think it was trying to aim for a battle, but Murlock pretty much shuts that down really quick, probably because of the fact that he wanted to take out that campfire, but it's not looking to be the case. So Murlock does decide to add a couple of more tier 1 warrants, more squirrels, the better. So we do see R22 deciding to take out these two. He does make sure that the mine get down, but he is missing one, so he's got to be careful. It does go off. The pre-gas is there though for R22, and that's going to not matter too much, as the squirrel count became too much, as R22 does lose a majority of his tier 1 units. But here's the thing, that mill is pretty much exposed, but at the same time, the army is there just in the nick of time before Murlock was able to do anything. And now here comes the pre-gas once again. The second skunk is here, as well as the rest of the units, so you could say that the advantage will be going over to R22, but the cams are also coming in pretty soon. The first one is anyways, but the pre-gas is once again becoming a huge factor, especially with the fact that cams are more melee than anything else. We now see R22 trying to take advantage of the ledge, trying to get some good value, as he does take out one of the cams. He's got to take out the other one, and he does just that. So now all that's left is the squirrels, but again, the squirrel count superiority is really coming into play here for Murlock, as a majority of the tier 1 units for Murlock does go down. All that's left is just the skunks. And now Murlock is going to beef up the tier 2 part of his army with a lot of cams and also a set of falcons to come his way. So right now, Murlock is trying his darnest to find something to play with, but the count is now going over to R22 for sure, as he's trying to find a way to step on in, but the mines are going to go off. And right now, this is just pretty much an entryway for R22 to just come in and try and sweep things up. He does decide to pull back though, with the cams doing a lot of damage, but the mines once again getting a lot of value, as Murlock has no choice but to go home. So yeah, right now a lot of poking and prodding between these two teams. I don't think it's going to be nearly as much to go ahead and take things out. Mines go off once again, and those mines placements are really coming more and more valuable as the battle goes on. And it looks like R22 is going to go ahead and take this one, as he does clean house defensively. I'm not sure if he's going to have enough to go ahead and go for an attack. It looks like he doesn't believe that that's the case. So he's going to go ahead and wait for some units to come and then possibly look to see what he has left. By the way, we did pass the 5-minute mark a little bit ago. So basically, this might turn into a very scrappy starve game, depending how R22 takes this, because he does have the economy lead, obviously, with the fresher farms, because that pig is going to go out pretty soon. He does have 2 farms available, essentially. Meanwhile, there really is only 1 farm, and Murlock is out. He's going to be starving. The battle is going to commence, and I just don't think it's going to be nearly as enough, as Murlock does decide to tap, as R22 does take game number 3. And now we go ahead and get into game number 4 between R22 and Murlock. Can R22 take the whole game by storm, or will Murlock be able to tie things up to a piece? So R22 rocking the long coats up north, while down south we have Murlock going with the KSR. So we do see some major change ups between both of these squads. We do see that Murlock is essentially going to go with the Falcon Cam as a tier 2. Does still have the mine, and will also be rocking the Squirrel as the mandatory, as the Badger comp is going to be coming into play. Well, R22 got to go for a more spicier type of composition. Going for a more pokey style, as the balloon and fox combination is going to be very intriguing, with mostly a tier 2 army and only having the squirrels as his primary tier 1. So it's going to be an interesting choice here for both of these guys to kind of play around with. We'll see who will prevail. Looking into the map, there are not a lot of mills to play around with, though it's clear that R22 has the distinct advantage because all the mills are pretty much on his side. This one's kind of way out there, so I don't think anybody's going to scout in this area. At least I don't think. But at the same time, R22 definitely has a lot to play with compared to Murlock, who does have a pocket mill, but that pocket mill is the only thing really left on his end. There's a campfire here, but that's definitely more so R22's than Murlock to grab because of how far away it is. So that's not the best situation that you want to be in for Murlock, but I think he'll be fine. Excuse me. So diving into this battle here overall, we do see that they're going to tie things up when it comes to the composition. R22 and Murlock are evening things out when it comes to the economy, so both of them are pretty much on the same pace. Army value goes to R22, obviously, mainly because of the fact that the squirrels are just really popping out for Murlock. Meanwhile, R22 is looking to try and defend as much as he can. Meanwhile, Murlock does decide to go back home, try to build as much farm as he can, take out the enemy commander, and is now going to try and scout on his own. And so far, R22 is just awaiting for his skunks to come out to combat the possibility of a superior squirrel count. But instead, Murlock is going to go ahead and sell and buy one of his cams. And actually just starts selling down his tier 1 entirely to really kind of rely on the cam to be the heavy tanks coming in. And the Badger will be coming out too. So Murlock really trying to be more aggressive here for this upcoming fight. Meanwhile, R22 trying to match it, trying to get as much of his tier 2 out as possible with one set of tier 2s each. Meanwhile, Murlock is just trying to prepare for a possible defensive tactics, just in case R22 wants to try something. But instead, R22 is going to go ahead and go for a third mill. This is what I'm talking about here when it comes to R22 having the advantage in the composition. Well, not composition, in the map placement, because he got so many mills available to him compared to Murlock, which he only has really these two, because that third one is so out of the way that actually I'm kind of curious. Does any of them have seen this? No, not at all. Well, he's seen it at least, and he has seen it as well. So they're probably gonna check it from time to time, comparatively. But I don't imagine that really coming into a huge factor for any of them. So Murlock is going to have to go ahead and try and charge in as soon as he can once the badge is out. Because R22 does not have any tier 3 out whatsoever. But he has plenty of falcons, and the wall of balloons could possibly cancel anything Murlock's trying to do. So both balloons are going to be out pretty soon. And it looks like that actually we are going to see the campfire get taken by Murlock. And Murlock's going to try to find a different angle to come in from, as the balloons are not going to become a huge factor in this game. But though he has to be very careful, doesn't want to give any kind of value over to the balloons to try and mow down this entire thing. The pigeons need to go ahead and heal up the Badger as well. They are able to do that, and he does fall back. He got his job done. At least one of the mills out, but that's all he can really do here. So while it's good to take out a mill, that mill in particular was already just about depleted anyways. So it didn't really matter too much for what he could possibly be doing. So now Murlock is trying to go for another attack. But he probably needs to try and find a way to get R22 to come to him, and it's looking to be the case as some precast starts to come out. But currently, Murlock trying to do whatever he needs to try and get us to a game 5. So right now, we do have the Badger getting revved up. One balloon does go down, but that's all that's going to be gone for the Badger. And that's just going to be a cleanup there, as R22 does end up taking the series 3-1.